Are you frustrated by the typos in your time entries and your invoices? I'm going to show you how to get rid of those. Now, this is a great idea that came from my own clients, and those are some of where my best ideas come from. So I'm excited to share this with you. I have a client that was getting really frustrated because it felt like every bill had a typo on it, and almost every time entry had a typo on it. She was proud of her team for keeping track of her time, their time, of course, but it got to a point where they were just going so fast and not paying attention and just typos everywhere. And so she got really frustrated. And so this tip actually came from her having attended the Clio conference and brought this up with Clio and said, why don't you guys put a spell check in Clio? And of course, the team there shared with her a tip that I'm going to share with you. And then I'm going to add one of my own as well. So the tip that they shared, which I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with, is the idea that we can go ahead and enable this spell check on whatever browser you're using. So let's hop over to the screen and I can show you exactly how that works. So over here, I'm using Chrome and I've created my time entry, and you can see I've got a couple of typos in there, just going too fast, right? That happens. And so what I can do is I can come into the settings in Chrome, and if I click over here, over on the right-hand side, and I come down to the settings button. Now, of course, it's going to be in a different place on each browser, but probably somewhere similar. And when I click on settings, it's going to bring me over to this. Oops, that's not the right screen. Let's do that again. When I click on settings in my browser, it's going to go ahead and bring me over to this settings screen. And I'm going to come down here. You can look for something called languages or something similar. And when I do that, of course, I've got English designated as my language, but you can see my spell check is turned off. So it wasn't catching those typos that were on the screen. And of course, that can be really frustrating. In fact, my client was having to export all our time entries, fix them up, go ahead and manually change them in Clio. But there's a better way. We're going to turn on this spell check right here, and I'm going to click that on just for my basic spell check. Of course, there's an enhanced one, but of course, now they're going to send my text out. I'm not so sure I want that, obviously, for confidentiality purposes. So I'm just going to use the basic spell check. I'm going to come back over here into Clio, and it will take a second for that to update. But in a minute here, you're going to see that now those familiar red squiggly lines are going to show up and show me where my typos are. So that's number one. The very easiest way for me to help correct that is to make sure my team members have their spell check on their browser so that they can go ahead and catch those things right away and we can fix them, right? So easiest way to make that happen, make sure that's definitely all the red squiggly lines are gone and I can save my time entry. But here's tip number two that I think you should also think about is Clio in its own settings has the feature called text snippets. So under settings, under text snippets, I can come in here and it's going to tell me that if I type in ACH in a time entry, it's going to spell out attend court hearing, right? And guess what? If Clio's putting it in there in a snippet, it's not going to be spelled incorrectly, right? As long as I entered the snippet correctly, of course, it's not going to come out misspelled on my time entry. Now, keep in mind, there's a limit of 255 characters for a text snippet. So I can do a short sentence, right? And I can do those phrases that I use really frequently. And then never again will I accidentally misspell dissolution or summons or one of those because I'm using the text snippet that's spelled correctly. So between those two tips, I want to make sure that you're both enabling the spell check for your browser and make sure that you're using the text snippets. Between those two things, that will greatly reduce the amount of typos that you have in your time entries and in your subsequent bills. So if you're looking for more tips like that, check out Streamline Legal Plus. And if you haven't figured out that practice management is going to change the way you practice law, talk to us about getting into Clio because it is definitely life-changing. Thanks so much for joining me tonight. Have a great evening.